Everyday Samurai, Episode 44. Greetings, friends, and welcome to Everyday Samurai, in service to your liberty and the security of a free state. How are you? Thank you for joining us once again in exploring the dual path of scholarly and martial arts to create a community of enlightened warriors that are ready to defend liberty and work toward a world that truly does work for everyone, because everyone is secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects, namely private property. Because a private property social and legal order is the surest recipe for peace and prosperity, as well as justice. And there are a whole bunch of opportunities to see injustice on display all around us. So your training in a martial art and studying the science of political economy is important not only for your own benefit, but for the benefit of everyone around you, and indeed the world at large. This is how we make a social contribution. Right now, amidst the COVID-19 lockdown and a whole bunch of issues of social strife taking the majority of the headlines, it might appear from observing the outside world that you might be powerless, or that there's so much beyond your ability to influence, that life is somehow stacked against you and that there's no sense in even trying to make positive change. Yet that is never the case, and we should never be fooled by appearances. The one thing that we can always do is focus internally to that internal locus of control, to the things that we can actually influence and make positive action towards. And for that reason, we're continuing our conversation that we started in episode 43, discussing posture. The way that we stand, the way that we carry ourselves, is the first thing that we can control, maneuver our body into the most empowered position possible, and then from there, expand our potency outward, according to a vision of what we want to create in the world. This, of course, begins with conceiving a greater good that we want to experience. It starts with a vision. But it might be really difficult to have a vision if you're in survival mode, if you're simply responding to what the world is throwing at you, which is why it takes a commitment to being centered. And for that, I advise a mindfulness practice. It's difficult also to get into a mindfulness practice, so I also advise leveraging technology, which is what the Rise Above audio track is designed to do. Provides binaural beat technology to put you in the most resourceful mental state, and then provides a positive affirmation to get you into possibility thinking, to rise above conditions and to see new possibilities that were previously unavailable to you, to recognize new opportunities, new resources, and new ways of being. Yes, it's kind of like having a superpower. I've been using this type of technology since 2007 when I came back from Iraq, and it's totally transformed my life. It can for you too. That's why I highly recommend it. So check it out at everydaysamurai.life/rise and get the Rise Above track. That's everydaysamurai.life/rise. Okay, now breathing, posture, and mind state form a cybernetic loop to create your experiences. And for that reason, we'll be continuing on with a deep dive into posture that we started in episode 43, working from the same outline. And there's an outline available for you to download at everydaysamurai.life/43 or 44. Sign up for our email list and you can download a free PDF of the material that I'm working with, because you're probably going to want to review this. The more you reference and go over this material, the more you're going to benefit from it. And I'm sure it'll be a handy reference for your future use. So go to everydaysamurai.life/43 or 44, get on our email list so we can stay in touch, and you can also get a free PDF download of the outline that I'm working with here. So with that, let's jump right in. Last time we spoke about posture, we left off with the concept of tactical breathing. And it's really one of the most fundamental things that you can take into your everyday life to not only check on your posture regularly, because whenever you try to do deep breathing, you have a tendency to naturally straighten up. So you straighten your spine, you align your ears over your shoulders, you align your shoulders over your hips. And if you're standing up, then naturally you'll try to put your hips over your ankles, which is one of the fundamentals of building a skeletal support structure to move around your physical apparatus. And that's one of the most fundamental things that you as a martial artist can have, is skeletal structure that supports your shooting platform or your platform for deploying weapons and tools, like every martial artist needs to. Like we discussed last time, we want to use our skeleton as a lattice work that supports the body as a weapons deployment vehicle or a stable shooting platform, a support structure by which we can hold steady our aim or project power. But more importantly, even if you're sitting down, if you're driving, if you're in any situation where you can take notice and do some tactical breathing, it also has an effect of bringing you back fully into the present moment and elevating your energy level, because you're expelling the byproducts of metabolism and you're bringing fresh oxygen to the cells. So it naturally brings more air into the lungs, more consciousness into the forefront, and more personal energy to deploy in whatever situation you need to focus on. And we went over last time, but it bears repeating that most tactical breathing programs will talk about a box or a square breathing technique that involves 4 seconds on either side. And standard descriptions of this involve an inhale of 4 seconds, a hold for 4 seconds, an exhale for 4 seconds, and then holding again for 4 seconds. I happen to suggest using the advice of Zen Master Taisen Deshimaru to focus on a full and complete exhale, knowing that the inhale will take care of itself. So rather than adding another 4-second pause at the end, I say use that 4 seconds to fully exhaust whatever air is in your lungs. And to that end, we'll change the formula a little bit. So tactical breathing in this way will be inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, exhaust for 4. And if you do that 4-second box or 4-second sided box 4 times, you'll have in 1 minute done a great deal to bring yourself into your fullest state and bring your highest potentials online. And I'm going to include in the show notes, just like last time, a video that I did on tactical breathing, but also another video that I highly recommend that describes the science of breath and some of the benefits biologically and in terms of reducing stress that come from the science of breath. So again, I highly recommend it, and I'll provide additional resources. And in terms of it being a benefit to martial artists and anybody who is dealing with a dangerous situation, I'll relay one of the stories that comes from an Aikido teacher that brought some of these techniques to the Honolulu Police Department. His name was Koichi Tohei, and he focused on adding ki to all of his Aikido techniques and the energy from all Asian martial arts and Eastern philosophy that undergirds the entire structure of the universe is known as either prana in India or chi in Chinese or ki in Japanese. And Tohei Sensei's Ki Aikido focuses a great deal on breathing and including that visualization of energy filling the body, but also being able to clear away any negativity or stagnation, even in an instant, to focus more on what the situation at hand calls for. And so when he taught the Honolulu Police Department, he actually got feedback from one of the students that said that he was out on patrol one night and got a bad feeling as he was about to clear a corner, knowing that he was looking for a burglar that was in the area. And so he did a quick clearing breath. It just begins with a short exhale, starting from the bottom of the belly and coming out through the mouth very quickly, like a whew, that sort of thing. And he did that before he rounded the corner, and when he finally did round that corner, the burglar was standing there with a firearm. He was able to successfully evade the shot and take the suspect into custody without further incident. But it was because he reacted to the sensation, being fully present in the moment, noticing that there was something off about the circumstances, and then clearing that breath was his ability to reset and be able to go into the situation with his greater faculties and be able to survive and to actually effectuate the arrest. So there's something to that tactical breathing. But more importantly, and moving on, when you have good posture, you're able to facilitate technique, meaning that because you're fully present, because you are free from tension and you've eliminated some of the white noise that comes from when you're holding too much tension in your body, then you're able to more fully use your posture effectively as a martial artist and as somebody who can stand fully in the world, ready to deal with whatever life throws at you. And I'll borrow from James Williams Sensei of Nami-ryu Aiki Heiho, stating that the posture needs to transform from fear to faith, because so many people, when they encounter dangerous circumstances, have a tendency to hunch over or to try to use a guarding posture so as to cover up their vital organs. It's natural. And that's the difference between people who train and those that are untrained, is that they learn how to overcome that fear, transform it into faith. And this is not something with religious overtones, but it's something of recognizing that you have faith in your technique, faith in your training, faith in your ability to deal with situations. And James Williams will use the term ungulate versus predator mode. So the ungulate are the type of animals that we find in the field that are more interested in grazing, and they're always looking down, whereas predators have their eyes looking forward. Now, we don't want to transform humans into animals. We want to make sure that we're living fully as human beings. And we don't necessarily want to be predators, but we do want to have those qualities that we take life aggressively, not aggressive towards anyone else, and certainly not trying to prey on anyone else, but we want to certainly not be a prey animal, an ungulate who's just looking down. And we want to reflect that in our posture as well. So we want to make sure that our shoulders are back. We open up our chests and allow our heart to come forward. And again, this has nothing to do with religion or any other type of metaphysical doctrine. We're talking about actual physical technique. So we stand with our shoulders back, making it easier to breathe fully and deeply. We open up our heart, and we're actually opening a chakra, if you're into yoga, and bringing our fullest faculties online. This is the way to oxygenate the cells, align the skeleton, and elevate situational awareness, which then leads to overall martial readiness. And this skeletal alignment allows us to draw or recruit power, first from the earth or the ground. We're drawing it up energetically into ourselves. We are able to more fully grip the ground with our feet. We can balance ourselves, and we are able to move in a way that we can survey the land around us, the ground and the situation and circumstances around us, because we have full posture. Those of you that train in a martial art might recognize when faced with multiple attackers, people tend to start looking at the ground, or when they become overcome by events. Just think of a shy kid who doesn't want to make eye contact or engage with the people around him. He's going to put his hands in his pockets and look down, kind of, aw shucks, leave me alone, please ignore me. The same thing is true for people that are overwhelmed with life or any other type of threat. They have a tendency to start looking at the ground because they're trying to cower from the situation. Again, this is about training to overcome those natural tendencies. Some of you might remember that movie Man on Fire with Denzel Washington, where he takes the job as a bodyguard. And at some point, the little girl of the family that he's guarding takes a liking to him, and he starts training her. He says there's no such thing as strong or weak. It's either trained or untrained. So which are you? Trained or untrained? And of course, she enthusiastically says, trained. That's the idea, is that it's really not about building muscular strength, although there is a component to that, but training the muscles is a matter of teaching them to fire in the right sequence so that they become efficient. It's not just a matter of what, but a matter of when. It's important for anybody who would be a martial artist or in a high-risk law enforcement military type field. And if you're an able-bodied American, you are the militia, and you are constitutionally tasked with the civic duty to execute the laws, repel invasions, and suppress insurrections. So that opens the aperture quite wide to understand strength as a skill, and that skill requires conditioning. That conditioning is about building layers of myelin upon the synaptic structure of the nervous system so that these responses become conditioned and automatic. And that's also one of the things that comes from skeletal alignment. We want to make sure that the bones are supporting the movement and the action. Therefore, we use strength as a skill, not necessarily as a brute force. And this is especially important when dealing with the employment of tools. The art of pistolcraft requires that you not overgrip or jerk the trigger. Snipercraft or precision rifle shooting also requires that you set up your skeletal alignment to support the rifle. And using excessive muscular strength is a liability. It will actually fatigue you quicker and also make it difficult to hold the rifle on target. Same thing can be true of tameshigiri, or cutting with a sword. Trying to cut using brute force without skill will actually damage the blade and make you look like a fool. Because if you muscle through your stroke, the blade angle will be off and you won't be able to cut through the target. And then people will laugh. Just do a YouTube search for tameshigiri fails. So skeletal alignment is something that all good martial arts focus on and is part of consistent training. And I will refer back to some lineages of the samurai tradition that are housed within the Bujinkan system, also famous for including ninjutsu as well. Now, I'm not licensed in the Bujinkan, but I have trained, and I know that there are two schools, one called Kotoryu and the other called Gyokoryu, and I forget which one actually states this as their basis, but one of them says power is generated by the hips and torso moving through space. And the other one says that power is generated by the torso rotating around the spine. What matters for our purposes is that we're not necessarily focused on our muscular power, muscular contraction, but the skillful use of our muscles to navigate the spine so that it can generate power naturally. Anyone who thinks that in order to throw an effective strike, you need to use tremendous muscular strength can simply recall or even experiment, if they feel so bold, to feel what it's like to walk into a door or a wall without stopping. You don't need to be actually throwing a punch. You can put the punch out there with just the movement, knowing that as you're moving the skeletal system through space, that you're generating sufficient power to cause damage with a strike. And the same is true, and especially so, when you're using either a sharp tool like a knife or a sword, or let alone a pistol. That muscular contractual strength, the type of tensing and bracing that goes into, say, lifting a weight or making a muscle, is not the type of strength and power that goes into maneuvering the skeleton. It's a different kind of strength. And that's the type of power that needs to be available in a crisis situation because it's more efficient, and combat is inefficient in and of itself. But when you get into an altercation, because circumstances offer no other alternative, you want to be able to efficiently deploy power. And for that reason, you want to stave off contractual muscle strength. You want to use the trained muscular power that comes from maneuvering the skeleton rather than contracting muscles. And that also has the added benefit of signaling the body to stave off any type of adrenaline dump. Because when the adrenaline dump happens, you know that you're on borrowed time. The adrenaline dump is not sustainable. Combat fatigue will set in soon because you are taking a shot of adrenaline that will increase you in the short term, but then there must be that under phase when you go into greater fatigue to recover from that. It's like taking drugs. You might enjoy a short-term benefit, but the long-term ramifications are entirely too costly to sustain yourself for the long haul. So this is another benefit of avoiding using contractual strength and also avoiding looking down by having proper skeletal alignment. And that's what the process of training is learning how to relax into that motion, learning how to deploy your skeleton efficiently, and then also keeping your head up and looking at the situation clearly without fear so that you don't go into that fight or flight mode. You don't go into that adrenaline dump mode. Harken back to my days in law enforcement on patrol, it's natural to expect that when you get a radio dispatch to a fight or a domestic violence situation in progress or a robbery in progress, that most people will get an adrenaline dump because they know they're about to go into a very dangerous situation or a potentially dangerous situation, even an alarm call. And you think about going to a false alarm, or you go to a call and things are okay. You deal with it without incident and you get back into your car and go back out on patrol, and you do that for 8, 10, 12 hours, maybe even you pull some overtime, 14 hours, day after day, getting that adrenaline dump maybe 9, 10 times in a shift, your body will react. And it is unsustainable because you are taking that shot of adrenaline each time. Your body goes up into a heightened, alerted state of awareness, and then it must come down. That's just the law of nature. That's just how our bodies work. We want to get to the place where we can relax into stress. We can relax under load, which is another term that we borrow from kettlebell lifting, where any type of dynamic strength is being able to relax under load. And we want to have the type of relaxation that is not a ragdoll. That's not the type of relaxation we're looking for. It's the ability to relax into stress, into maneuvering our skeletons under load, whatever that might look like, whether it's deploying a weapon, swinging a kettlebell, or throwing a punch. We need to be able to relax, but do so skillfully, knowing that we're able to align the bones in our body to meet the situation as required. And so this is another way that we hold ourselves high in the world, knowing that we can take effective action. And this is another aspect of asserting dignity in all areas of our lives. And that's one of the things that Egen Show, the Book of Dignity, is written to inform, that martial art is not about survival. Martial art is not about simply winning fights. Again, fighting is inefficient. We want to avoid fights at all possible. We want to use the ability to negotiate, using our minds to reason, to influence other people, rather than getting into altercations that are potentially life-threatening or debilitating. If we wanted to be safe, if we just wanted to survive, we would isolate ourselves. But we want to be able to live with dignity in human society and provide a zone of protection for ourselves and our loved ones, and ultimately, hopefully, our communities and society as a whole, by holding ourselves and upholding the principles of a dignified life. And we recognize paradoxically that the best way to secure peace is to prepare for war. Martial art is really more than just self-defense, but the assertion of dignity in society, and how we carry ourselves is a big part of that. And Egen Show, the Book of Dignity, goes into this in great detail. I would recommend everyone read it, and if they want to just get a outline of that, I have one available at everydaysamurai.life/dignity. Sign up for our email list and you get a free PDF download. So one of the other benefits that comes from good posture is internal congruence. We are standing guard at the doorway of our minds and deciding what we take in. That's one of the things that we get when we have good posture. And again, this can be when you're driving, sitting, standing, what have you, moving. As long as you recognize, and it takes time, we have to go through the stages of learning until we become unconsciously competent at these internal states of aligning the skeleton, recognizing what we're thinking, recognizing the stimulus that is coming to us. Our minds as human beings can only process about 5 to 7 bits of information at a time, even when we're out in the world and we're receiving thousands upon thousands of stimuli. We have to consciously decide which ones that we are actually going to take in. We evaluate how we focus by working with those meta programs that we talked about in the previous episode. Posture allows us to be internally congruent because we are holding our heads up high and we're taking notice of the things that we are sensing with our eyes, with our noses, with our ears, and the general feeling, as well as our own internal dialogue. So we get that internal congruence by standing guard at the doorway of our mind. The Zen master Taisen Deshimaru advised that you do your Zazen practice like a general surveying his troops from horseback, meaning that you have your head up straight and you are in a dignified posture, able to survey the forces before you, knowing that Zazen is an internal awareness practice and that these forces are your forces, meaning your highest and best self able to take action in the world. But also when we have good posture, our bodies respond. We have to take into account our level of fitness. We have to focus on diet and exercise, our mobility, and then also how we train ourselves through regularly participating in our martial art and increasing our skill and then reinforcing that skill through training. Part of that internal congruence also includes a spiritual aspect, and this is not about religion, but somehow knowing your place and your connection to all in the cosmos, whatever that is. Good posture is always a part of that, and that's why church pews are wooden and they usually have a straight back, and you're expected to sit up straight when you're in church, or if you're meditating, that you start by recognizing your spinal alignment, you keep your head up, and you have that good posture throughout your meditation practice. Yoga is another one. You have that internal congruence that allows you to act with dignity in the world because you know who you are in your mind, your body, and your spirit. And then you want to also evaluate what your values are. What's important? What's important to you about life? What's important to you about work, about family, about society? These opportunities to question what it is that you believe and why lead to insight, and then allows you to be more skillful in how you approach life, especially how you spend your time, because time is a scarce resource. It's a non-renewable resource. So knowing what you value in life and knowing what you want to create allows you to direct your time more skillfully, more efficiently, and get maximum return for the energy that you expend in those directions. And that internal congruence can also extend to the body of your affairs. So that's kind of how I remember things, is that mind, body, spirit, and the body of all of my affairs, acting on what's important, honoring agreements, having internal congruence and not violating, because it's important that we as human beings know what we believe and follow through. And then we can follow through to create satisfaction, to know what it is that we want and know where we want to go, align our means and our ends into a plan that allows us to take skillful action, and then evaluate the results of that action to determine whether or not we got closer or farther away from our goal. And then repeat that over and over again, evaluating and making course corrections until we either complete the plan or revise it in some other way. This harkens back to the idea of an airplane is off course about 70 to 80% of the time, and that it's just a matter of the pilot making continual course corrections until they get to the right destination. So we can take this type of internal congruence and knowing the 6 steps of how to take skillful action and get where we want to go. Again, know where you are, know where you want to go, align means and ends into a plan, take action, evaluate the results, and then repeat until you either complete the plan or revise the plan. And that is something that we can do for all of the things that we want to achieve in life, to include having satisfying relationships with our friends, our families, our coworkers, and any social, religious, or civic organizations that we belong in. And that includes the dojo, that includes your gym, that includes everyone that you interact with. Having a consciousness of knowing what it is that we want to create and moving towards it is part of living a satisfying life. And we can take this, again, everywhere that we go in life, whether it be in business, whether it be in our families, friends, colleagues, the community, and our political society. I've stated several times, and I continue to reiterate, that law is very simple. We want to create a private property-centric law so that we can have a society that values private property, because that is the mainspring of human progress. Carving a piece of raw materials for ourselves and then transforming those into greater goods is how humanity elevates its material status, its material well-being. This is also the process by which humans can elevate their well-being by trading with others. And the more complex an economy becomes, the more solid the foundation of property rights needs to be, regardless of what the socialists and the other talking heads want to convince you of, which is another reason why everyone needs to engage in a mindfulness practice if they want to cut through the delusion and the distractions. And in order to have a functioning society, we need law. And the law can be stated very simply: do all you have agreed to do and do not encroach upon other people or their justly held property. And this is the formula for friction-free social interactions. That is how we can interact with one another without aggression, yet be able to trade what we have with others in order to get what we want. Rather than trading ammo, we trade goods and services. That's the difference between conquest and development. That's the difference between aggression and mutual prosperity. That's the difference between conflict and social harmony, is to have a culture that abides in the law, that recognizes and values private property, that recognizes and values the benefits of social cooperation, the division of labor, and having greater economic integration. I don't want to have a concern about the balance of trade between myself and the grocery store. I already know. I don't work there. They don't pay me. I pay them. And it's a wonderfully harmonious relationship. I create value for others in other ways, and I receive remuneration in other ways. So I don't need to be concerned about what other people are doing. I'm only concerned about myself and how I create value in the world. And that's the type of society that thrives and prospers. And this abides with Sun Tzu's admonition to take it whole when contending for all under heaven. It is better to keep a walled city intact than to tear it down. This is the true art of war, to protect the wealth of nations. And that's what internal congruence can give. But it starts with one person at a time taking the action to evaluate themselves, to stand guard at the doorway of their mind to make sure that they're free of ignorance, anger, and aggression. Yet knowing also that there will always be those that choose to indulge in the 3 poisons of ignorance, anger, and greed, that will choose to make their living through aggression rather than through peaceful trade. That is the task of the warrior, to be fully imbued with the qualities of awareness and also understand the law, that righteous defense of private property and enforcement enforcement of contract, to make sure that people do all they have agreed to do and do not aggress upon the justly held property of others, means that there is always going to be the need for the warrior that stands to uphold integrity within themselves and within social relationships. And that is why we train along the dual path, bunbu ryodo, of scholarly and martial arts, not only for ourselves, but to be a net contributor to the security of a free state. And it's a long journey, a lifetime path, yet it's totally worth it. Friends, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Everyday Samurai and look forward to seeing you next time. Be sure to visit everydaysamurai.life/44. Sign up for the email list and get a download of the outline of the material that we covered on this Posture to Prevail series. Share the show with a friend, someone you think that needs to hear this material or that would resonate with our message. Like, subscribe, and consider giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or the podcatcher of your choosing. Do your part in building that community of enlightened warriors, ready to secure liberty. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and be well.